support to me and everyone at NPOCA. It is only with her encouragement that we have reached this far. Dr. Marilyn Mays is the Executive Director of Asia Pacific Career Development Association, arguably the largest association for career professionals, and principal of SciCon Institute in US. She started her work as a career professional in 1975, actually much before I was born. Dr. Mays has worked for ACT, a leading admission test organization in US, similar or much like SAT. At ACT, she was responsible for development of the ACT profile named Discover and other computerized career planning tools. She is considered an authority in career education and planning and has been mentoring career practitioners for more than 3 decades. Dr. Mays is a fellow of National Career Development Association, and she has received an NCDA's President's Award in 2016. I wouldn't take much of your time and pass on the stage to Dr. Marilyn Mays. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time and being with us. And the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Arun. I really appreciate that introduction. Let's see if I can turn on my slides. Yes, do you see them now?
Yes.
Great.
If
okay.
I can get it, yeah.
I'm getting a sign that says my microphone is not working correctly, which means that my connection is poor. So I apologize. I don't know how to make it any better. I've done my best. I'm going to keep talking. Tell me if I fade away and just let me know. The topic today is future-proofing careers. And what I'm talking about, of course, is not our careers, but the careers of the people that we work with and the clients that we work with. And I'm thinking especially of younger people when I think about this today. The career tends to last about 40 years. So what we're talking about when people are beginning their careers is trying to think ahead for a long time, and a lot can change. We know that work is rapidly changing right now, and we know that the demands for certain kinds of workers are constantly changing. So it's very difficult to even imagine what might be happening 40 years from now. Most people change jobs many times in their career. Now, I'm not talking about the actual jobs, I'm talking about the career of the individual, which could have many different kinds of work involved in their lifespan, in their work span. And the question, of course, for youth is how do they make wise choices when there's so much at stake and things are changing so quickly and we don't know the future clearly. I want to tell you a little story about myself. My career has spanned 50 years, and when I first started, I was a math teacher, but then I became a career counselor, and I wanted to market my services. And so I went first, of course, to a graphic artist who prepared a camera-ready copy of my brochure. And then I went to a printer. And when I met this gentleman, he was wearing navy blue coveralls and his hands were covered in black ink. So it was clear that ink was a very big part of his life. And he was, of course, protecting his clothing by wearing coveralls so that the ink didn't show so badly. He spent a lot of time cleaning the presses and trying to make sure they worked correctly and removing whatever problems there were in the operation of the presses. He was a very highly skilled person who knew how to make a master from my camera-ready copy, and he then knew how to fix the presses if they weren't running the paper through properly, and fix the master if there were any spots on it which were not to my liking. He would fix that. So After he showed me, after he put the master onto the cylinder, he then covered it with ink and ran some paper through. He turned a crank and made the paper run through against the master. And he pulled out a couple sheets and showed them to me. He said, now this is what it's going to look like. Is this correct? And I approved the copy. And then he ran the complete number that I asked for. That was 50 years ago. Now, when I go into a print shop, a young person, most often a woman, looks like maybe a graduate from high school, points me to a machine, and I go to the machine and I run my own copies. I just have to push a couple buttons. When I asked my original printer friend if I could get blue ink instead of black ink, he said, well, I'll have to clean the press, get all the black ink off, and then I'll have to put on the blue ink. And then when I finish your project, I'll have to clean it again and put on black ink. He said, that would be a couple $100. And so I said, well, I guess black is just fine. But today, when I go to the print shop, I print color ink and I get whatever color I want. So the situation has changed completely. And when I run the press. The press is actually a copy machine, which works very easily. The person who's running the organization, the woman who checks me in, is just looking at a computer screen to see how many copies I ran. She doesn't know how to run presses or how to make those machines work. If they stop working, she calls a repair person. So things have really, really changed in that amount of time, especially for printers. And one of the questions we have to ask is, what happened to that man who was a printer back in the old days when he had to run a press? So it's that kind of question that I'd like you to keep in mind, and I'm going to get back to that gentleman a little bit later in my talk. So what are some of the things happening? We all know about these major trends. I'm just going to talk about a few of them today. The first one is the fourth industrial revolution. I think everybody talks about that one, and it's definitely making major, major changes. Global warming, that's a very important one, and I think we don't want to leave that out. We need to consider the effects of global warming. Globalization, our jobs we could be working for companies anywhere in the world today with the internet, and so our options are much greater than they were before. I want to talk to you about the entrepreneurial age, which many people believe is the one we're in now. And then I want you to keep in mind, and I'll just remind you at the beginning and the end, that the rate of change is increasing. We are constantly having change, but it's happening faster and faster. Let's see if I can get my slides. There we go. Okay, so we all talk about the fourth industrial revolution, which means artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence promises that we will have dramatic, unimaginable changes. Some of the changes which we have imagined so far are things like driverless cars and trucks. When you think about all of the people who drive cars or trucks for a living, that's an army of people. And imagine all of those people being unemployed because of this new technology. That's very similar to my friend who was the printer, and eventually that became an obsolete occupation. Accounting for many years now has been done by computers, but it's still changing. It's still improving. The computers are getting smarter and better. And so the job of accounting is one of those that has changed dramatically and continues to change, because the accountant is the one who operates the computer, but the computer does most of the work. And the accountant, of course, has to make sure the work is done correctly and the results make sense. Computers can make a whole lot of garbage if we don't put in the right information. The person who is the accountant in this case is making sure that the correct information is going into the correct place in the computer so that the results make sense. It's a very important role. And it's possible that someday AI will tell us when we're not doing things correctly, but right now it requires a very skilled human being to operate the computers and make sense of what it's telling us. We know that there is software available which will analyze illnesses. Doctors can use this software right now. They can enter the symptoms they're seeing. The software will begin to suggest possible problems, and the person who's the doctor then can search for the additional symptoms and see what else might, which one of the problems might be most likely for the. Does that software mean that the doctors won't be there in the future? Or does it mean that the doctors will use that software to help them think about diseases they may not be thinking of? A person who's traveled to a place that's far away may bring back an illness the doctor is not so familiar with, or it may be something new that the doctor hasn't really encountered before. So those software programs can be very useful to the doctor, but will they be used by the patients and displace the doctors is the question. And, you know, personally, I'm not sure that will happen, but I have gray hair and I'm old-fashioned and I like people. And I think that that will continue, but I don't really know. So we have whole categories of jobs that will be, or could be wiped out. And certainly we have these jobs that if they're not wiped out, they will be very different. They will change dramatically. We can see a few of these things, but there's many more changes that we can't see. And the future is very unclear. You know, I think about my printer friend who didn't think about any of these things at the time, and he was telling me he was trying to get interns to work with him. Now those interns, those young people, had 40 years more to live their careers. And so I wonder if they were worried that the future was not bright for the printer. What occupations can people go into and hope that as they go through their career and they can continue to change and have a job and be valuable? The answer, first of all, one answer is to become a technology expert. Now, there's many kinds of technology experts. There are a few people who can be the designers and inventors of new technology. These are very, very bright people who learn to understand the technology really well, and they can use it to create new products and to are not even considered today, that are new and meet a need that is not being met yet. Then there's people who I call developers, who take that technology, that new technology, and make it work for ordinary people. They often are called computer programmers, but many of them, especially with some of the kinds of technology that we are encountering, are not programmers at all, but other kinds of technicians. Consider the cell phone in your pocket. Think about all the people who had to develop software and also hardware for that cell phone. My cell phone has a camera, so somebody had to develop the camera, and it has some other tools to use the camera. Those were developed by software, by computer programmers. But those people work together to make all of those pieces work properly and make it so small that it can fit in our pockets. There's also a category called expert users, and these are people who try new technology, who are looking forward to new technology, and as soon as they find it, they begin to try it and use it and see how it can be used, and then they can explain that to other people, like, oh, you could use that for this particular purpose. That's very helpful because most of us aren't spending our time working on things that we're familiar with. We're not keeping our eyes open for new things and spending time learning new things. So these expert users have a very important role in spreading the word. And the name for them, usually on internet right now, is influencers. These are people who discover the new technology and then tell all the rest of us about it so that we can understand it and become excited about using it. There's also teachers. They become familiar with the technology and they teach it to the rest of us. They try to understand it enough so they can explain it to us. They teach us how to use it and how to understand what it does and what it doesn't do. And of course, there's repairers. There's people who have to take the machines apart, put them back together again whenever something goes wrong. So all of these people are in the technology field. And most of these people, we recognize them because they are working with technology. They are interested in gadgets. They're interested in making things work or making the machines do what we want them to do. Another category of people is artists. Artists are the designers. They make the products, these items that we buy, fit for us. There were designers working on the chair that I'm sitting on. Designers worked on the pen that I write with. These designers think about how the object is going to be used and they try to make it useful for everyone. There are also graphic designers, which do the same thing with words. And this is a very big need. We know that there's many places where words are very important and where graphic arts, pictures, are also very important. And those two are often combined, put together in very interesting ways that hold our attention. And sometimes the picture explains so much more than the words. So the pictures and the words together can be very powerful. And a graphic artist has those skills to put the words and pictures together to make a visual impact on us. There's other people who work with images in more complex ways, such as videos, and people who provide entertainment to us through movies. So there's a lot of different kinds of people working in the video entertainment area. Many, many, many different people are employed in those areas. And of course, there's performers. There's people who are excellent in playing a violin, playing a piano, acting in a play, or playing sports. So many of these artists are finding jobs and will continue to find jobs. Could you imagine going to a performance of robots playing all the pieces of an orchestra? That sounds pretty silly to me. I don't think I'd want to hear that. But I would go to a performance of people playing all those instruments, and I do that often. I love to hear the music being performed by people in front of me so I can see them performing. So these people are very important to us, even though they may not create something that's new. They may actually be creating new sounds, new kinds of music, new kinds of art, or they may be performing by playing sports and playing games that we're familiar with, but perfecting their skills at catching the ball and dodging their opponents. And we enjoy watching those things, and that's a very important part of our lives. Another whole field, which I'm sure all of us on this call will be happy to talk about, are human services. No matter how many robots we have, we are still going to need teachers and trainers. Teachers, of course, in schools, and trainers in corporations. Once people leave school and they need new skills, we call those people trainers. But they're still doing the same work. They're still taking the technology or the object or the knowledge that people need, and they're explaining it to people so people can understand it. We're going to need managers who can supervise human beings and help them to be their best, try to help them to meet the needs of the company. We need healthcare providers. In this time of COVID, we're very much aware of that. And we'd be at a loss without all these people that are willing to take care of us when we're sick, even though they're putting their own lives in danger. We need people in the hospitality industry. Now, certainly right now, the hospitality industry is suffering, but it will come back. There are people who work with airlines, people who work with hotels. There are people who work with tourists and tour guides. And all of those people are needed in our society. And then there's many, many kinds of service jobs, services that all of us would like to have in order to make our lives more comfortable. And we look forward to having those people join those careers and providing these services to us. So these are all occupations which will have a future and which will continue to have a future in spite of the technology. But the things that people can do is to keep themselves abreast of the technology and to be early adapters so that they can learn and teach others how to use the equipment, how to use the technology, how to be experts in it. Okay, I'm going to stop talking for a minute and ask for questions. And I'm going to ask Arun to share if there are any questions.
So I think just let's give it 30 seconds. You can use the Q&A section to ask questions if you have any till this time. So the first question that we have is, in these COVID-19 times, how do we place ourselves to get re-employed?
It's possible to get, yes, re-employed is a very difficult one, and especially for people graduating right now who don't have jobs at all. It's very difficult. I think that's a little different than what I've been talking about. I've been talking about technology displacing us. Now, as technology is coming in, if you have a job, the best idea is to not get displaced. It's very important to keep looking at the new technology and thinking about how the new technology might impact your job. Now, I'm assuming that my printer friend was very much aware of how printing was changing. And rather than being displaced and laid off, actually it was his own business, that he was constantly thinking about, how can I change my business to take advantage of these new changes so that I am not the one who is losing business, so that I still have an income. And I'm hoping that my printer friend did stay up with the equipment and ended up with a print shop where other people could run their own copies so that only the most difficult graphics needed to be run on his big press. If he did that, then he would have stayed in business for a number of years. And in spite of the decline in the industry, he would have still had a business. I think it's very important to be flexible and to keep what's happening in technology around you and how that might impact you. If we just go to work every day and we think only about getting our own job done and don't look around and see what's happening to the other people around us and what the technology is doing to change the work we do, then we will miss out and we will be the ones who are laid off. But if we are the people who are constantly watching, looking at the news, looking for new things, we will then be the people who have moved and are able to move forward and to find new jobs, find new ways of doing our job and doing our job more effectively using new technology so that we're still valuable and still needed in the labor market.
There is a question, Dr. Mays, which says jobs will be there, but won't they become lesser, especially with online teaching, which will go on? We
So
don't
I
know
want to be the
till when.
person who is online. Yes, I want to be the one who is doing the online teaching. Definitely. I think one thing COVID has taught us is that we need to be digital. We need to have the skills to keep the audience active and engaged, even though it's online. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. I'm in the US and you're in India and UAE and many other countries. I wouldn't have this opportunity without this digital technology. And I really appreciate that opportunity. So for me, it's been an opening opportunity, an opportunity to expand to what I could have done before. And I hope that for all of you, the technology will be the same, that you will continue to use it in new ways and expand your own value by reaching out to people that you never could have seen face to face, that are available to you electronically, but not available to you physically.
I think we can continue with the session.
Okay, I'm going
Uh,
on
yeah.
to the next topic then, and I'm sure that more questions will occur to you. Let's see if I can get my slides to go forward. There we go. Okay, so let me talk about another problem that we all face, and that is global warming. I think we all know that the oceans are rising. Now, when that happens, then storms destroy the buildings which are built near the oceans. So those buildings need to be rebuilt somewhere safer. That's, of course, going to employ a lot of people in the construction industry. But hopefully, the people in the construction industry are building smarter buildings, which will be able to withstand the storms better in the different locations. Areas of drought are expanding. How can people survive in areas of drought? Well, there are techniques. People can store water underground where it is not going to evaporate so quickly. People can learn how to make crops, grow crops with very little water. The Israelis have done a lot on that area, trying to turn the desert into a place where they can grow a lot of food, and they export food to the rest of the world now. Storms are getting more violent, so when the storms come, there's a lot of destruction. And again, the construction people are very busy repairing that construction, but hopefully also thinking about ways of making sure the buildings are not destroyed by the next storm. And of course, energy. We really do not want to continue making the earth hotter and hotter. What we want to do is to use wind and solar power so that we can have the advantages we need, the electricity that we so much rely on, but have it without burning fossil fuels. If we can do those things, we can help to prevent the global warming, and eventually perhaps we can help to improve and turn around some of the global warming. So all of these intense changes in our environment require new technologies to hopefully deal with these problems. For example, in the Netherlands, most of the produce is grown in greenhouses. Now that has a lot of advantages because the pests are not there. So the products, the fruits and vegetables that are grown in the greenhouses don't require pesticides. That makes them a lot safer for those of us who eat them. And it helps the environment by not using so much pesticides. The environment is contained, so when it's hot, the moisture is not lost. The moisture condenses and goes back into the system to feed the plants again. So this process of containing the nutrients and making sure that they can recycle back into the same environment, into the same growing environment, and be used again to grow the plants. This has been a huge advantage and has saved so much water so that the use of water by those industries is so much less than the ones that are open to the open air. All of these changes, all of these technologies, which are being used so well in that case, are available for people in the rest of the world to use. And many of us need them. If you live in a dry place, it could be a great advantage to build a greenhouse and keep the moisture inside. You could use a lot less water. So those are things which, first of all, the technology needs to be developed. Then people need to use it. You need to have expert users who are testing it and making it work properly. And then finally, you need teachers to go out into the field and tell the rest of us how to use it and help us to build the greenhouses and build the environments which will allow us to grow the food with less fossil fuel, less air conditioning. If we can do that, we can slow down climate, and possibly someday in the future we can reverse climate change. That, of course, is the dream. But there are so many different technologies in this area. There's so much that we could be doing that we don't even know how to do now, that it will be very, I think, helpful to most of the clients that you work with if they consider the possibility of going into the field of climate change and trying to work with changes to the way we do things that can save the environment and that can use natural resources like wind power and solar power to power the things that we need to do. So lots and lots to be done in this area, in addition to, of course, construction to rebuild the damage by the violent storms that we're getting these days. Another thing to think about, globalization. You know, I think that a lot of us today are aware that we can work anywhere. We can provide our services to people in any country. So that's wonderful. But then, of course, the problem within the countries that we're living in is that sometimes we are at the mercy of what's going on in the other countries, the wealthier countries that are paying for our services. So when those countries are having problems like COVID and having a recession, then our services become less valuable. And I think it's very important to recognize sometimes that whole industries can disappear from one country and go to another country if the companies find less expensive workers in those other countries. That's one of those frightening things about globalization, but it's something we need to recognize and not take it on ourselves, not take it personally when this happens. Quite often, the economic problems that the rest of the world is encountering are going to have major impacts on us. Even though we didn't begin those problems, we didn't create those problems, and yet we still are impacted by them. So globalization makes our lives less predictable. We are not always in control because the major forces in the world are taking over and changing things that we wish would stay the same. I want to talk about a completely different kind of thing now. I want to talk about a concept, an international concept called precarious work. This is something that you'll find discussed a lot at the UN on their website. They are very concerned about it. This is short-term projects, and the employee then has to frequently change employers. Once a project is finished, the employee has to find a new employer that wants those services. What this means for the employee is that they never become experienced, they never become recognized in their own company for having years of service. I think we all know that the person who has been working in the same place for many years knows all the people to ask when problems happen. They have answers to common, ordinary problems that we may have not faced before because they've been there, they've seen that happen before, so they have answers. They have knowledge that the new person doesn't have. And because of this constant change of employers, these people are never getting that kind of upward movement, that kind of background knowledge, which then is recognized and often promoted if the people stay in one place. So this short-term work causes people to have to start over in each location, use new skills in each place, and learn to meet new people. All of those contacts they made in their former work are not relevant anymore. Now they need to make new friends. And it's very hard to constantly be adapting. And not only that, it is a leveling force. It means that everybody is equal. There's nobody with experience, nobody that knows how to do things well. And so all of that experience is lost through this precarious work. For the employee, there's also a lack of financial stability. You hope you can find a new job, but it is so hard to constantly be looking for jobs and having to sell yourself. You're having to try to explain why it is that you are better than the other person for these jobs, which in many cases the employer believes that everyone is similar. So you're always seeking new opportunities, and you're always hoping that the new job will be better than the old job, that you will be able to leverage your experience in some way and move up into a better paying position. So another word for precarious is temporary. We use that a lot in the US, and I don't know about India and the UAE. I'm going to talk about it and hope it's relevant in your areas. I know that in some cultures they are fighting temporary workers, but in many, many countries, temporary workers are becoming much more common. Companies love temporary workers because they don't have to provide a commitment to that worker. If they have a long-term worker, they would normally provide training, and they may even reimburse people who go to school and get more skills. The companies are avoiding all of those costs by having temporary workers. In the US, the companies also avoid health coverage because health coverage is given to permanent workers, but not temporary workers. So the temporary workers, when they get sick, they have no income because they're not working, and they have no health coverage because they're not working. So they are in real trouble. It's a very, very desperate situation for these people. The temporary workers can't make demands because as soon as they try, the employer says, go away, I'll find someone else who's willing to do the work. They don't listen to what the workers want. So the environment where the people work may be uncomfortable, it may be too hot, it may be too noisy, the hours may be very bad. Doesn't matter. The employer doesn't care because they'll find somebody else who is willing to take that job. So these people are precarious, and the number of these people is growing rapidly. Employers are finding ways of cutting costs by using many more temporary workers. It's pretty scary. So looking at that from the employee side, some people try to turn it into a positive and say, well, it's the gig economy. The gig economy was begun by people who were, say, musicians or actors or dancers or consultants. These are all people who knew that they would not be in the same place for very long. Musicians would play perhaps in one venue and then move to a new venue to get a fresh audience. Actors would act in one play, one movie, one whatever, and then move on and find another job. Same with dancers. Consultants, again, would help consult in one location and then move on to a new engagement. And each of these people are perfecting their skills, and they are taking those skills with them to the new job, even though the employee they have all these skills which they have developed in their previous environments. So people who are doing this, people who are saying, yes, I will be like a consultant, I will move from job to job, these people have embraced the concept of temporary work and said, I can do this, even if I don't have benefits, even if I am not being given promotions, I will make sure that I am gathering skills, that these skills belong to me, and that when I move to a new location, I will explain that to the employer and make sure that that employer pays me more than the employer would have if I didn't have those skills. So it will be my responsibility to take care of myself, to manage my finances so that my in periods of unemployment are covered by getting a higher salary when I do work, to sell myself, to make it clear to the employers that my past experiences qualify me for a higher salary. I will take this on. I will be responsible for managing my own life. And what that will give me is constantly new challenges. Each time I take on a new gig, each time I take on a new project and in a new environment, there will be different challenges and I will learn from those challenges. So I will be constantly growing, and therefore my skills will be in even more demand than they were before. People who embrace this gig economy can be said to have entered the entrepreneurial age. Now, an entrepreneur can sell a product, or the product could be themselves. So a consultant is basically an entrepreneur, but the product they're selling is themselves. They could also be selling a new product. So an entrepreneur could be a person who says, I think I have a better way to seal envelopes, let's say. So I'm going to create this new way of sealing envelopes, and then I'm going to sell it. It takes a lot of energy to do that, a lot of knowledge, and you have to have many, many different kinds of skills. First of all, the knowledge of the field you started in, but then marketing and accounting and so on. You have to go on and do a whole lot if you are marketing your own product. But if you do that, and especially with the internet, you can do that more easily, the rewards could be very large. The new product that you created, if it's successful, could be one that solves a problem people have, and people could then be using it widely throughout the world. So it's possible, especially through the internet, to develop a new product and to market it and get it out there, starting small, but growing gradually. Now, of course, when you do this, you are taking risks. And a person who embraces this process and says, I want to be an entrepreneur, is a person who is willing to take risks. This is something that goes with it. And that is a very important qualifier, a very important skill for young people, especially today. Those people who are willing to think of themselves as entrepreneurs, as possessing skills and being willing to go out and take risks to sell those skills in the world, are the ones who are going to be the winners in the entrepreneurial age. Now, the things I'm telling you are from a person named Defi On, who lives in Malaysia, and she was speaking to us about the people that she's been working with there in Malaysia, helping them to find jobs as entrepreneurs. And her advice is, find something you love and then get really good at it. Because if you are better than anyone else, one who's hired to carry it forward. So her belief, and I'm not sure I'm quite a believer yet, but her belief is that if you really love something and you get really good at it because you love doing it, you then can do work that you really love and you can make a living doing that. She said that you need to stop thinking about competing and instead think about connecting, communicating, and co-creating. All those other colleagues that you run into, people who have their own inventions, do their own things, those are people who are able to co-create with you. Ask for their help. Get them to help you with your project, just a little, and they will keep you energized by connecting, communicating, and co-creating. You and all of the friends that you make along the way will be able to benefit, to all of you will be able to profit, and you'll keep yourselves energized through this process of connecting and communicating. Devi recommends that you work on yourself, that you find these skills within you, that you have to, within you, turn your attention to this entrepreneurial attitude and become the person that you want to be. You need to develop your skills. Now, we've been talking about that. I've been talking about that all morning. Morning for me, evening for you, but throughout my talk, I've been talking about developing skills. But she's also talking about developing within yourself the skills to implement and to carry forward, to communicate, to connect with others, and to sell yourself. And she talks about your personal energy signature. Each of us has a different personal energy signature. If you know who you are and you know what you are, then you can very clearly explain that to other people. And that will help you in this entrepreneurial age. I think that as work becomes increasingly temporary, the number of people who can stay with that job for a long time is very small, smaller. I think that the majority who are young today are going to exist in this entrepreneurial age. The young people who we're working with today need to have this attitude of, I will find something I can do and be really excellent at. And in some way, I will be so good that I will be able to be in demand. Now, one of the questions that was asked to me earlier was, in this time of COVID, how can people find jobs? And this is the answer right here. If you can find a way that your work can exist on the internet, is make sure that you are the very best, and then you can communicate that through the internet. These are all things you can do right now in spite of COVID today. And once you define what it is that you are selling, you're selling yourself, you're selling your own personal skills and the things that you can do better than anyone else. But once you define what that is, and you are aware of that, you're aware of your own personal energy and your own knowledge and things that you want to share, you can begin to do that on the internet today, in spite of COVID, and you can earn money. You can become an earner in the sense of providing for your own needs and providing for your own future. So these are things that you can do today that will allow you to create a new job for yourself. Make sure that your employment is continuing. Let me just circle around now and talk about some of the things I talked about at the beginning. I talked about that the rate of change is increasing. So what this means is that as changes are happening faster than ever before, you must learn constantly. The skill of learning, of knowing how to learn and knowing how to find what you need, is one of the most important skills you can possibly have. And I think for all of those who are working in schools, this is a really important message to take back. Learning to learn and knowing how to learn what you need to know, finding your own answers. This is just an incredibly valuable skill, because learning never stops. Just because you finish school doesn't mean you've stopped learning. You will have to learn for the rest of your life. Things are going to keep changing. You learned in school will be obsolete probably in 5 years after you graduated. So you will need to keep learning, and you'll need to know how to keep learning. It's so important for you to be able to have this skill of constantly learning. You will need to seek news, which impacts your career. Once you have defined who you are and what is the center of your career, what the skills are or the topics or the subject matter that you want to focus on, then seek news about that topic, that area, that specialty, and constantly find out what's going on in your career, in your field. And if you do, you will then be the person who is on top of the changes. You will be the first to know instead of the last to know. You will be prepared. You'll be able to move forward. Always be thinking about how to work faster and smarter. And the new technology can help you. So use the new technology, make it your friend, and be the person who is the smartest worker, gets the most done, because they're using the technology really well. So in summary, I talked about the fourth industrial revolution, which of course is driving change, global warming, which is driving change, globalization, which is driving change. The rate of change is increasing, and I talked about the solution, which is to embrace the entrepreneurial age, to become a person who has the answers and can provide answers to other people. And so I'm going to turn the floor over now and ask for questions. Oops. There we are. So Arun, can you tell me if there are questions? I see Q&A has some things in it.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Madeline. So there's so the first question, and I'm reading it out as it is. Of late, many cases of depression and frustration related to career and professional life are being reported, especially among students. How far softwares would be able to help?
Arun, was that depression? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Depression and frustration. Yes. And I think that now I'm trying to figure out if this question is related to COVID or is this more generally beyond COVID?
I think we can take it beyond COVID as well.
Okay.
You know, there is a spike because of COVID, but nevertheless, it's still there.
Certainly, COVID has caused a lot of depression. Possible.
No, I think we lost you in between. So if you could repeat
Okay.
The last 15
Yeah,
seconds.
I was just noticing my screen has changed. The COVID has blocked a lot of the things that we plan to do. It has forced us to change, to take on new burdens, to struggle with technology in ways we never had to before. So certainly this has caused a lot of depression, and I am very much aware that depression and frustration is very common right now due to COVID. So that is part of it, and I can definitely speak to that. But I think that if the people who were depressed before COVID, I think we're possibly facing some of those changes I was talking about, the inability to find work that is permanent and meaningful, to find rather that the opportunities on the temporary level are much more available, but that the work is often been routinized. It's work which is routine, and the person is expected to be similar to every other worker. There is nothing unique about the worker in the eyes of the employer. The employer believes they can hire someone who has the skills they need, and if you don't like it, they'll hire another person. And that is very depressing. So I think that the real secret is to engage in the concepts of the entrepreneurial age, to think about who you are that is really unique, what it is that you can offer that is unique. And even if it seems like a small thing, become the best in doing that you possibly can be. and then learn to market your skills on the internet, because that is what is available today. We do need to spend our time on the internet instead of face-to-face. So learn how to reach out to the people who want those skills and provide them to those people. And it may not be the large employers. It may be small-time people that need to you need to reach out to. So broaden your perspective. Think about anything you can, or about any audience, not just jobs which are offered. The difference between an entrepreneurial perspective and seeking a job is that a person who's looking for a job is looking for an employer that wants the skills that person has. The entrepreneur says, I have these skills, I can solve these problems for you. They come to you saying, these are the problems I can solve. Do you have problems? Do you want me to solve those problems for you? Once you rephrase your skills in that way, these are the problems I can solve for you, then it gives you the power to be the problem solver, to actually help someone else and provide services to somebody else that are meaningful to that person. Then you just need to find the person who needs those skills. And that's quite a different situation than looking for a job. So it does give you a lot more power. And for some people, that can help with the depression. It can be very invigorating to do that.
There was a part of the question, Malin, if you want to. The question is also to understand how would technology help, or if technology would be able to help.
Yes. Well, once you become strong in using the technology to solve whatever problems you solve, then you are the one who is selling the solution. You are the one who is being helpful. You are the one who is meeting the needs of society. And that gives you the better mental health. I'm not sure that software itself solves mental health issues. I think that the technology is the tool that helps you to provide the needs, provide for the needs that others. Quite often those needs are human. Quite often we need somebody who understands our problem and can solve it for us, because we can't quite describe the problem. We are not exactly sure what it is that we need. And having someone else say, this is what I can do for you, is that your problem? Is very helpful, because people say, oh yes, that sounds like my problem. Yes, I could use your help. And then you become the agent of help, which is a much more enabling perspective and helps you to get out of depression.
The next question is, how about the role of counselors in this disrupted world? Would you feel that social emotional balance and health would become an area of immense development and hence jobs?
I definitely agree with that. Absolutely. I mean, certainly we have all facing emotional challenges, and counselors are the people who are trained to deal with those problems. I think again, the counselors need to take that entrepreneurial attitude and say, what skills can I provide? What services can I provide? And those services definitely fall in the social emotional balance area, and offer those skills. I think that you will find work. You will find people who want your services if you can create a package which other people can say, yes, that's what I need. So package it well and make sure that you use the internet to do that. And then I think that you will be able to provide those services and solve your own employment needs through helping people live or find balance in this desperate time.
Okay. Ma'am, what is your advice for teachers handling future generations? How should they equip themselves to produce better citizens to face future challenges?
I think I've talked about a lot of things that we need to be teaching our young people today. We need to be teaching our young people to be entrepreneurs. I think youth are naturally suited to that. I think youth tend to be less worried about risk. Sometimes we try to tell our teenagers, please don't take so many risks. You'll kill yourself before you get to 20. But I think that the young people are risk takers. And so we need to help them channel that risk taking into the concept of, or into the place of building their own skills, developing something which they can offer other people, and then marketing themselves with those skills. And even the youngest teenagers can do this. We know this. There are many teenagers who are making good livings on the internet by marketing their skills. Some of them are providing videos of how to use a certain kind of technology that leads to advertising opportunities for them. And there's quite a bit of income for people who are internet influencers. Teenagers do that really well. There's many other opportunities for them. Younger people can develop skills in teaching people of any age how to use technology. They can be the early adapters. They can be the ones who are saying, look, there's something new out there, something exciting that you can use that will solve a certain problem for you. And if they can help to market that solution and market themselves in that solution, that I will teach you how to use this new product, I will teach you how to be the best, then they have learned to support themselves financially, as well as providing new skills to other people. And a lot of it has to do with being early adapters of technology. People who learn the new technology and then share it with others and teach others how to use it. So what does that require? It requires the skills to use technology and understand it. It requires the skill of marketing, of communicating your skills to other people. Also management in terms of packaging yourself, figuring out what it is that you can do better than someone else, and creating a package, a visual package perhaps on a video, or a graphic package in the sense of on Facebook or some other social media, WhatsApp, telling people what you can do for them. And it also means that when you work with other people, you must have those interpersonal skills, those communication skills to actually teach and help people learn well. So all of those skills are things that our youth need to have and need to perfect in order to become good entrepreneurs and to sell themselves in this world in which jobs are short. And the job they take today may not last more than a few months. And they must be thinking that way in terms of, I will keep advancing myself, even though it may mean that I will have a new job, that I will be unemployed for some time. I will keep advancing myself through different opportunities and through taking new opportunities. And opportunities may be short term. The employer may say, I only need you for a short time. But if that means I will get skills from that new job, it may very well be worth it. And if the young person is seeing themselves as honing their own skills, I am the instrument which has to be refined, then that young person can go forward with that process of improving themselves and becoming more and more valuable constantly, and then explaining that to other people, so other people come and say, yes, I want your skills and I will pay you for your skills.
Okay. This one is, I think a lot of people are talking of this. Online work is unlimited. It's unending, does not allow for work-life balance, and impacts mental health. So they're looking at, if you have any inputs on this.
Right. This is, again, an entrepreneurial skill. If you are going to work online, you must take responsibility for yourself. And again, here's a field for counselors. When you work like that online without structure, you need to provide your own structure. And quite often you need somebody who has counseling skills to help you create that structure in your own life. You need to create a structure which will give you the time to reflect, the time to grow, the time to meet your own personal needs. You need to know what your own personal needs are. You need to recognize when you're feeling burned out, when you're feeling that you just can't keep doing this. Actually, that's probably when you've gone too far. But if you can get familiar with that feeling, you may be able to catch it sooner and not let it get to such a bad place. But learning how to adapt to this new environment is a real skill. And a lot of people need help with that skill. So all of you who are counselors out there, please consider coaching people in how to adapt to online work.
Okay. There is a gap between the education and skill set. I think some of these questions that I'll come up with might not be necessarily a part of the discussion, but I'm still bringing it up. There is a gap between education and skill set. How can we bridge the gap?
Yes, there's a huge gap. And the way we can bridge it is by explaining it to people, to the young people, and telling them they are responsible for their own skills. They must learn through education what they need. They must be the consumer. And when I go into a grocery store, I don't buy everything in the store. I only buy the pieces that I want, the best fruit, the best vegetables. And when they're a consumer of education, they need to do the same. They need to pick the parts that are meaningful to them, always being aware that in the future, things may happen that they don't know are going to happen. So having that extra knowledge, things that they don't know they need to know, but that would be helpful to them. It's very important that the individual, that the young person sees themselves as controlling their own life, as being the person who is picking from their education the skills they need, and also picking the skills online or picking the skills from other sources that they need, because the skills come in many places. You cannot just rely on your education.
It's a request from Mr. Deepak Senghi. He says, can we list the skills in the post-COVID era?
I think the skills in the post-COVID era are very similar to the ones in the pre-COVID era, except that there's a lot more online, which is required, online knowledge. So we need to know how to use social media. We need to know how to communicate with the world digitally. That's a skill which may be new for some of us, or is a skill which is more important today. But the other skills are very similar. We need to be able to work with people. Almost all of the things we've talked about involve people. Now, certainly, the people who are involved in technology can bury themselves in technology, and the only people skills they need are to work on a team with other professionals who are also buried in the technology. But not many of us can do that. Most of us need to work with people. Most of us need to either develop our skills in teaching other people new skills. We need to develop skills in communicating well. We need to develop skills in listening well so that we can understand the questions other people have and then solve their problems. These are all human skills. These are all people-related skills. We also, of course, need to learn about history so that we can learn from it and move forward. So we need many different subject matters, which are all, of course, things that are offered to us in schools, but we need to, the skills that haven't changed, the skills are not new skills. Those are very traditional skills. The new things are simply the technology part, which I think we all are aware of at this point.
So I don't know if this is again a repetition, but this came in a little early in the session. How can we guide a child towards his or her career?
Yeah, that's hard because quite frankly, I don't believe there is one Mr. Right. I don't think there is one career that a person could enter that is just perfect for them and that they must go into that one field. Now, my husband is an exception. He knew when he was 8 years old. Please forgive my cat who is trying to get my attention in the background. I'm sorry. He'd like a little more attention. My husband, when he was 8 years old, decided he wanted to be an astronomer. And that's what he did for his entire working life. And he worked on the Hubble and built the advanced camera in the Hubble along with the team he put together. So that's a case of a person who knew what he wanted to do. But there are so few people like that in the world. Most people could do many things and could do many things well. So it is hard for each individual to find something that they want to do and that they can really do with passion and enjoyment and fun. But that is the secret, and that is the hard part for each individual. And I think counselors are in a good position to help youth figure that out. But I do think it is a skill that is not, there is no magic bullet. There is no perfect way of doing that. I think we have to learn how to guide people to find their own passion and the passion within. And of course, they cannot have a passion if they don't know about the field, if they have never been exposed to it. So we have to continually expose people to new concepts, new ideas, new technology, new parts of the world to understand, new types of knowledge, and see what happens for the youth. See if we can light a fire within that young child.
Okay, so I think this is being discussed very frequently around me as well. It's predominantly coming with the excessive screen time. If I read the question, how to cope with health hazards which might happen post-COVID due to excessive online usage, especially for young school students.
That's a very good point. Yes, we are focusing now online because we have to. And especially for younger children, it's really hard for them to get the physical movement that they need while they're sitting in front of a screen. There are educational programs trying to do that, just that now, to get the kids up and moving around, which is good for them. But certainly too much screen time can be a serious problem. I think that is something all of us will be watching. And I am hoping that all of us will become better at managing our time. As we are working more online, it is less structured. People may ask us, can you meet with me at night, in the evening? Can you meet with me early in the morning? So we're scheduling our time in very different ways than we used to. The concept that we worked from a certain time in the morning, like 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night, is gone now. We're working when we need to work. So how do we find time for ourselves? How do we make sure that we get outside or that we get some kind of physical activity which helps us to expand, to take care of our bodies in addition to our minds? That has to be managed. This is another skill which we are going to have to add to our repertoire. We're going to have to learn how to manage our time so that we make sure that we meet the needs of all of our parts of our body and our mental health. And each individual, young children and mature adults, are going to need that skill.
What are the careers that are going to become redundant and the ones that are going to boom post-COVID?
Well, I think what I've been telling you so far is that the redundant occupations are going to be the ones that are the most routine. Anything which can be done by a computer, and computers are really good at routine. They're good at repeating over and over and over the same process. So think about anything you do in your career, or if you're looking at a career, always be thinking about how much of that is routine work. That part of it is probably going to be a good candidate for being outsourced, for being done by technology. You know, consider, for example, how you used to spend your time versus how you do now. Now I have in my pocket my cell phone, right? What does that have on it? It has my camera. I can quickly take a picture if I want to explain something to a person and send it to them, and they can see what I'm talking about. It has my calendar. That gives me structure. That tells me what time I have to be in a certain location. It has communication tools. I've got my email, I've got my messages, I've got my WhatsApp. I've got all of these ways of communicating with people now on my cell phone. I actually don't spend much time speaking into my cell phone. I spend more time looking at the screen because there are so many devices on there. It also has an alarm clock. So I can take a nap when I have a break in my schedule, and then I can make sure I wake up in time to meet my next commitment. So all of these things are available to us. My life has less routine in it now because a lot more is being handled by my cell phone. But I can get a lot more done. So the routine parts of my life may be gone, but what's still there? I still spend a lot of time communicating. I still spend a lot of time sending messages or writing documents or trying to make it clear to other people how to do certain things. That is still present. It's still very much the same, but that is not routine because every time I do it, I'm doing it for a different audience, a different situation. I'm explaining things which are new and different. So that's the part which will not be taken over by the computer. Those things which are creative, a little bit different each time you do them, and the things that will be taken over by technology are the things which are routine.
Okay, so I request you to type in your questions. I've got a couple of them, but with your permission, Malin, I'll probably open the microphones, or I'll take requests for people to ask questions over there.
That'd be great.
Microphones. So, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and the first one on my list, I'll pass on the speaking rights. Yes, sir. If you can just unmute and ask this question.
Yeah.
Mr.
Hi,
Srinivas,
ma'am.
yeah.
This is Srinivas. I last worked as Associate Director for SRM University, Amravati. For a brief period of 9 months, I had to take a sabbatical. So my loss of job was before COVID, and my application was while COVID, and I was supposed to get the job while COVID. And now my application is considered post-COVID. So how do I handle the situation to get back to track?
It's very difficult, isn't it? And especially because now that we are isolated from each other, it's hard to speak to the person and express your own skills and individuality. We have to do all of those things electronically. I'm very sorry, and your story is certainly a hard one. What I believe is that we need to have many irons in the fire. We must not rely on one to come through for us. And we can do that with this digital age because we can work near home or we can work for somebody far away. I think we need to be constantly networking online and looking for possibilities that can use our skills. There is nothing as attractive as a person who is needed by many different employers. If you can find other places that can use your skills, I think you will become a much more attractive employee just because you are needed and you are wanted. It may not be possible, but if it is at all possible to look elsewhere and try to find other opportunities, I think that would be very helpful for you so that you can be a person in demand instead of a person who is waiting to be employed. I hope, I don't mean to be unrealistic and to ask for something that is impossible, but that would be my advice, to try to find some ways to market yourself online and spend your time doing that and making relationships online, getting known by other people, other employers, spreading your reputation a little bit wider so that you will then be a person in demand in the future.
Meenakshi ji, if you can unmute and ask your question,
Yeah,
please.
I have a question now regarding this fall in economy post-COVID. Do you think it is the responsibility of only the politicians and the leaders, or it is the combined effect of everybody, the entire population of the whole country and in turn the world, to do something to bring up the status of the country and hence the world itself? And how are we going to work for this?
Oh, this is a very, very difficult question. I'm afraid I don't have an answer. I have been asking the question a little differently. In the United States, we are doing the worst job with COVID of any country in the world. And my question is, will we be the last to recover because we are so bad at this? There's no answer to that question either. What will happen in the future when COVID, what I believe is going to happen is that as a vaccine becomes more prevalent, we will begin to be able to go out in public again. So life will return to normal at the point at which most people have been vaccinated. Now, I think that could take another year. I don't really know. I don't have a crystal ball. But I do think we need to be working now to live a life which is meaningful and not waiting for the time when COVID is finished. I think we need to be trying very hard to adapt to the present. I think when the world opens up to us again and we can again meet face to face, that life will become a little bit easier for all of us. Now, I may be wrong, but I do believe that. I think we will have a little less pressure than to be digital. We'll be able to use those skills, interpersonal skills that we had previously used, and it will become a little more comfortable for us. And things will begin to gradually become better. And I think that will happen quite naturally when things open up. But that's the best I can say. I'm sorry, I am not an expert at all in this field.
We respect that. Mamta ma'am, you have the speaking rights.
Yeah, thank you. My question pertains to the students who apply for international courses to international universities. Considering the COVID situation now, a lot of them and the ones who are going to apply later are also very skeptical about the idea, and they are planning to pursue courses in their home country. So do you think, this COVID situation is going to, change the course and the career path for a lot of children who were planning to study abroad?
That's, again, a very difficult question to answer, but let me just look back at 2008 when we had the previous economic meltdown. A lot of people, actually in Japan, they have a word for this. They call those students who graduated in 2008 the Ice Age generation. And what happened to them, and in Japan, they have a different system. You have to get an employment for life when you graduate. And if you don't get that employment when you graduate, your life is different. You will never be exactly in the same track. So what happened to those people in the Ice Age generation is that they are simply behind in their earning capacity. That the friends they had that graduated the following year jumped on to the escalator and moved forward in the normal way. But the people who graduated in that 1 year, when the economy was in so much trouble, were not able to jump on the escalator, and they are still struggling, and their lives have been slowed down economically. So they're still in temporary jobs, they're still working part-time gigs, whatever. I believe the future is temporary work. I believe the future is part-time gigs, and I think we need to become more skilled at managing those. I think we need to learn how to use those to get us ahead in our careers. And I think the more that we can focus on taking advantage of what is available right now, the better off the young people will be. But the people who are waiting for their career job to come along will be behind. They will be left behind. I think if you are waiting right now and expecting life to go back to normal and just waiting for that to happen, you will not ever catch up. That what you need to be doing now is be very active with the digital economy. You need to be very much involved with communicating and using social media and finding places for your own skills and your own personality to shine. And that will then turn into your career. So it will be a different career, perhaps, a different path than you expected to take, but I think it can be a meaningful one and can be your path.
Thank you so much.
We're almost nearing end of today's session. Last two questions that I have in the Q&A section, and I'm reading it verbatim. Don't you think the gap which has happened in the field of education due to COVID is going to create an impact on the career of the youth?
Clearly, yes. But I do believe that educators need to be encouraging youth to think of themselves as entrepreneurs and to get the skills they need. And the gap, of course, is always an issue. But I think it's very important for the youth to begin to take responsibility for themselves and for their own careers and learning new skills, getting the skills they need, which might be online as well as might be something offered by a school. There's so much available for free that if the youth will take responsibility for their own education, I think that they can actually make up for the gap, that the gap will disappear for those youth. Now, I know there are a lot of youth that are not self-starters. I've been a teacher. I know this well, and I do not know how to light a fire under those young people. But the ones who do take responsibility for themselves and who do spend their time learning and trying to find the next best thing, I think will be able to overcome the gap and will be the ones who are the leaders of the future. And I see one final question in the question area. What should the key skills for the future-ready career? I think the key skills for all of us are in that entrepreneurial side, to learn to think of ourselves as being responsible for our own career and to think of all the skills that we have as being part of our toolkit. And if we think that way, if we're thinking always of building our own toolkit and trying to improve ourselves so that we are better problem solvers for someone else, it's always, as an entrepreneur, it's what problem that you have that I can solve that makes me valuable. So the question always is, what can I do to solve the problems of the other people in the world? And if I can express that, if I can say, yes, I can solve these problems, this is what I am skilled at doing, then I think that we have built our toolkit well, and it will take us into the future. Always, of course, with the knowledge that we need to keep learning, that nothing that we have learned now is going to prepare us for the future except the ability to continue to learn. So that's as much as I know, and I'm sorry I can't answer your questions better, but I really appreciated this opportunity to talk with you. And I hope that there's some of the things I've said have had some value to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madeline. With this, we would be closing today's session. The participant certificates would be emailed to you over the weekend. And thank you so much for attending today's session. Bye-bye.